Hello everyone, it's Foolish Pedro here, back once again with a behind the scenes look at my 100 Ways to Die series, with another 100 Ways to Die playthrough. I asked you a lot if you wanted to see more videos like this, and you said yes, so I will try and get out a couple of these a year. Mainly if there's a game I'm playing through I think would suit this series. Making this video now also gives me a great opportunity to say thank you for all your views, shares, comments and subscriptions. As in the week I published this video, I finally received my first paycheck from YouTube. It was a little above £60, so I can't exactly quit the day job or retire and move to the Galapagos Islands anytime soon. But it's not about the money. It's about the pride and sense of achievement I got from making this channel. I love making these videos, and it's clear you guys too. And being able to make a tiny bit of money from it really makes me feel like my work is actually half decent and not completely wasted time. So thank you. So here we are, Max Payne 3. This is the 5th level in the game, called Alive But Not Exactly Well. We've come to an old boatyard to rescue Fabiana Bronco, who's been kidnapped. So we've just made an amphibious entrance, and of course the first thing I'm going to do is turn around and see if I can jump into that water to drown myself. Here I'm met with an old nemesis, an invisible wall. Max just casually strolls into the water, and then he can't go any further. If you watch my previous 100 Ways to Die playthrough in Modern Warfare 3, that's the shitty 2003 version by the way. You know how much I hate things like this. This video game hand-holding as I call it. Things like this always get in the way of these videos. Although Max can't go in the water here, he can later on in the mission, so keep an eye out for that. So after failing to dry myself, it was time to carry on with the mission, see what I could find. So why did I choose Max Payne 3? Seems like a bit of an odd choice. This game came out in 2012, and we've not had any sequels since. Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, it was a suggestion in the comment section. See, I do listen to you guys sometimes. And also, I just played through Alan Wake 2, and obviously, Remedy made the original Max Payne games. And also, the Max Payne voice actor was also in Alan Wake 2 as well. And it all just reminded me of how great this game is, and how I needed to play through it again. In a sad coincidence, shortly after my playthrough, James McCaffrey, the voice actor of Max Payne, sadly died. He really was a great talent, with his rough, gravelly but also very emotive voice. I know it's a bit of a downer to start the video, but it really needed to be mentioned. I went into this game not knowing if I'd even be able to find 100 Ways to Die. It's not an obvious choice. With games like Call of Duty, you know you're going to be able to find plenty of ways to die in an active war zone. There'll be lots of explosives, things like tanks, enemy helicopters, bombs, mortars, artillery, crazy action set pieces, things like that. But this is all very much like a civilian setting, I guess you'd call it. We're going to nightclubs, slums, airports, and this boatyard. When I started making this video, I was fully prepared to buy the first two games, which I haven't actually played through before, thinking that I wouldn't be able to find 100 Ways to Die. And instead of the video being about Max Payne 3, I could make it about the whole trilogy, but there was no need to in the end. As by the time I'd completed the campaign, I managed to find 144 different deaths, so plenty to choose from in the end. So there was no need, but I probably will visit those games at some point, especially as I hear Remedy is remaking or remastering those games, so they'll definitely be featured at some point in this channel. As I make my way through these yards and abandoned warehouses, I'm constantly scanning the environment, looking for things that might kill me. I'm side-eyeing all these barrels, seeing one that will explode if I shoot it. I'm sure if you've played video games for as long as I have, you'll instinctively know which ones will explode if you shoot them. They're always bright red, or have some sort of explosive symbol on them. But all these things are just old and rusted, and it's obvious they won't explode if I shoot them. Right, here we go at last, some bad guys. I remember this part of the campaign very well. I couldn't tell you last time I played this game before this playthrough, but it's certainly been a fair old while. But one thing I clearly remember is if I shoot that bright yellow chalk, or brick, or whatever it is, behind the pickup tire, it rolls backwards and kills these two dudes. But why should I let those two have all the death? So I clear them out and see if it kills me. And yeah, kill confirmed. Max can indeed get killed by this driverless pickup truck. I wasn't quite happy with that shot though, as Max moved. I wanted him to stay nice and still, so it's very obvious and clear what is happening. I can be a bit of a perfectionist sometimes, and what is quite a simple but unique death will be captured multiple times until I'm 100% happy with it. Right, I kept still, the camera angle's good, that one will make it into the final video. Okay, with the first death under our belts, we can carry on playing with the mission as intended. We finally see Fabiana, and she's not looking too hot. After this cutscene, I noticed this window, and decided it would be a cool thing to jump through in slow motion, and then get filled with bullets. Fairly simple death, but it should look pretty cool. Unfortunately, the bad guys have other ideas, and keep shooting out the window before I have a chance to jump through it. So I had to keep letting Max get killed to restart this part of the level, so I could jump through the pristine window. Obviously, these deaths aren't going to make it onto the final cut. So I kept trying, and then eventually I got there. It was in this warehouse I got another idea for a funny death. When I was laying on my back and spinning around trying to shoot bad guys, I thought it kind of looked a bit like I was breakdancing. So, after choosing a better position, speeding up the footage slightly, and adding a little bit of Run DMC over the top, we had ourselves a funny little death of Max trying to breakdance. So as I mentioned earlier, I filmed this shortly after playing through Alan Wake 2. Managed to get all the footage done before Avatar Frontiers of Pandora came out, which also became another 100 Ways to Die video. If the game's a new release, I try and get the video out as soon as possible. But obviously, the time it takes to make a video varies. A Call of Duty video, if I rush it, can take about a week to make. That's all the way from playing through the campaign, and then editing it together. An open world game, such as Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, probably took about a month to make. Obviously games like this take a lot longer to play through. And obviously I want to play through the game and enjoy it, rather than just try and rush through and make a 100 Ways to Die video. The editing process can take a few days. First, I'll pick out the music. This can be quite tricky sometimes. Obviously I can't use any copyrighted music, or it will cause serious problems for my channel. So I have to search for royalty-free sources, often using YouTube's audio library, or video game soundtracks, which you even had to be cautious using these, as some of these also turn out not to be royalty-free. This video includes some music from Call of Duty Black Ops, which I felt fitted the mood and theme of the game. There's also some royalty-free Latin music as well, to match the South American setting of the game, and then there's some music from the YouTube audio library. I often pick music I've used before in other videos, mainly because I know it's safe to use, and I won't get any copyright strikes. It can be a real hassle, adding music, then editing everything together, then uploading it, only to find that I can't use the music, and I basically have to start all over again, which can be a real pain in the ass. After I've chosen my music, this is when I start doing the video. Honestly, I'm a real cheapskate, and I have the most basic video software there is. But it gets the job done. It's simple, like me. I add all the video clips I've captured, which I've saved onto my laptop, which can sometimes result in hours and hours of footage. With the capturing process, it's just a case of linking my consoles up to my laptop through a capture card. I don't have it constantly recording all the time whilst I'm playing through. Okay, hold that thought. We've got a forklift here. A potential death. Forklifts can be a bit hit and miss in video games. Sometimes they explode, sometimes they're there purely for decoration. Sometimes you can shoot the forklift anywhere, but a lot of the time it seems like you have to shoot them in the fuel tank. And that's definitely the case of Max Payne 3. You can tell by the way the reticule turns red, it's going to blow up if I shoot it. And that's exactly what I do. Boom. Forklift death done. So anyway, what was I saying? I don't have it constantly recording all the time whilst I'm playing through. If I feel like there's an interesting death coming up, I'll switch on the recorder and get the footage I need, and once the death is done, I'll switch it back off again. They also make the editing process easier, and also not completely fill up my laptop's hard drive. Although saying that, for this behind the scenes video, I did actually leave it recording constantly, so I could have some footage to talk over. Even though I'm not recording constantly, I can still end up with hours of footage, which I can pick out my favourite deaths from and edit down. During this stage I'll also be adding all the captions as well, trying to think of funny things to write, and of course adding the numbers, so I can keep track of how many deaths I've done. I'll frequently go back and recheck, just to make sure I haven't missed any numbers out, or repeated one, until I've counted all the way to 100. Once I have my 100 clips, this is when I go back and add the sound effects. You know, all the funny screams, comedy noises, memes, stuff like that. That always gets added later. Sometimes I know what sound effects I'm going to add beforehand, but I'd say most of the time, the inspiration comes to me whilst I'm editing the video together. Sometimes I'll remove a few of the sound effects if I think I've got too many of them close together, just to help the video and audio flow better. Then I'll double check any spelling mistakes, maybe change a few of the captions if I'm not 100% happy with them, and boom, there we go, that is my editing process. Fairly simple really. As I mentioned before, if the video game is a new release, I like to try and get the video out as soon as possible. But if it's an older game, I'll record all the deaths and clips I need, and then it can sit on my hard drive for well over a year before I actually edit the video together. I've had poor old Battlefield 4, Halo 3, and Hitman 2 sat on my laptop's hard drive for well over a year, waiting to be edited together. But I don't mind having a back catalogue I need to work through. It gives me a chance to play through some other games where I may not necessarily be making a video for. Because believe it or not, I do actually just play through some games for fun sometimes. It's not all about trying to make content all the time. I promise one day I will sit down and make these videos, but I have no idea when. This next death didn't make it into the final video. Throughout the game there's many of these set pieces where Max will do a slow motion dive, or he'll ride up on a chain or do a zip line or something. You get to blast away at some bad dudes. With this one he jumps out the back of a boat and fires away madly. I had thought about adding a caption such as abandoning ship or something for this one. I decided there wasn't anything really unique or particularly special about this clip, so it didn't make it into the final video. Another death that didn't make it into the video was me diving headfirst into a propane tank. I was trying to see if it would explode if I headbutted it, or if I could shoot it and then dive into it to make it look like my headbutt caused it to explode. But this clip never really worked. As I mentioned in my previous video, I do sometimes fake deaths if it's something that could genuinely kill you but doesn't in the game. I feel like it really should make it onto the list anyway. But I like to try and only pick the genuine deaths, so that's partly why this one didn't make it into the video. And also because the video already contained 2 other incidents of exploding propane tanks. One the larger kind in a garage, and the other on a barbecue. So I decided to leave this one out. Sometimes I like to film the same gag twice on 2 different levels. After clearing out yet another warehouse full of bad guys, I find some interesting posters in this office. I found some similar interesting posters on a previous level. When it comes to deciding which of the 2 I'm going to pick, I'm more likely to go for the death that's appeared in the level that's appeared the least, if that makes sense. If I've already recorded 10 deaths from the boatyard mission, and only 5 from, let's say, the nightclub mission, I'm more likely to choose the clip from the nightclub. I like to keep the whole video visually interesting. Luckily for me, Max Payne 3 is a great game, and is really good at keeping things visually different. Each level has its own unique feel and style, and even Max keeps changing his appearance. So when it comes to editing the final video, we can have lots of variation between the deaths I've recorded. In the end, I didn't use the clip from this level, mainly because it's so dark I can only just about see what's on the posters, so this one was left on the cutting room floor. While I was playing through this part, I realised you could actually shoot the grenades and they'll blow up, which is something you really see in games, so I knew I had to include it into a death somehow. The easiest thing to do would have been to let the grenade land on the floor, and then shoot it, but this would have been boring. So I decided to try and shoot it whilst it was being thrown, blasting it out of the air as if I was clay pigeon shooting. But this proved to be very tricky. It took multiple attempts. Out of all the deaths on this level, this one probably took the longest. I just couldn't seem to get the timing right, so poor Max kept getting blown up and shot again, and again, until I finally got it right. And in the end, I think the clip actually does reference clay pigeon shooting. The shooting grenades and molotovs comes up multiple times later on in the game, but I completely forgot about this mechanic. I probably could have made life easy for myself and waited later on in the game for a set piece like this, where it probably would have been way easier to shoot the grenade, instead of trying to chance it here. But oh well, still a cool clip. After a tough shooting section, we're back on Fabiana's tail again, as we enter this marina, and the marina means boats and water. I remember I had attempted to drown Max right at the start of the level, and couldn't because of an invisible wall. Perhaps I'll have more luck here. Well, you can dive into the water here, but Max doesn't drown. Instead he just magically reappears, pulling himself up, soaking wet, probably wondering why on earth the player made him do that. But he didn't die. Well, not yet anyway. At this part of the level, a boat goes by with guys shooting at you. It's one of the examples in this game of a vehicle being used to either shoot at you or try and run you over. I know I had to get a death in here. I know it's just a basic getting shot death, but having the shooters on a boat makes it more interesting. For the first attempt, I healed myself for some reason, and I didn't end up dying. But on the second attempt, the guys found their mark, and I fell to the ground. I know we've got a whole vehicle section coming up later, with lots of boats shooting at me, but because I'm on foot here rather than in a boat, I decided it was visually different enough to be its own death. So this death was simply called Patrol Boat, and later on the death will be called Speedboat Chase. This shows a clear difference between the 2 deaths, even though they might be similar. With enemies all over the place, I decided to jump into the water again to see what would happen. Much to my delight, a little cutscene plays out. Max plops into the water, and they get shot for being an idiot and trying to swim away, which is a nice detail. Although this clip didn't make it into the final video, as you can do a similar thing on a much later level, where you're on a yacht, and I decided that that one's a bit more visually interesting, as I didn't end up using a lot of clips from that level. So that shot made it into the final video, and this one didn't. One thing I had to quickly check was to see if the boats exploded. I tried shooting boats in various different places, but nothing seemed to be working, and I think blowing up this propane tank on the back of a boat confirms that they can't be blown up. With Max Payne 3, I had a great fun leaping about the place with this unique game mechanic. It also gave me a chance to make some very specific deaths for this game. A lot of really interesting physics often happens with Max leaping into things. You can make him lie down or even sit down on things for humorous effect. So throughout this playthrough, A few of my favourite things I managed to get Max to do was to chill out in a nice big comfy chair, sit down on a toilet, and have fun on a child slide. I knew this game would be a great choice for this series. So absolutely destroying a whole army load of dudes who were probably just doing their jobs down at the marina. It's time for one of the game's multiple on-rail vehicle sections. I was wondering if there was a way I could blow myself up here using the fuel pumps, but as soon as you get anywhere near them, a cutscene starts and they blow up on that. And then the vehicle section begins, so you can't go back and try again. So there's no way to blow yourself up with the fuel pumps here, unfortunately. But we get to do it later on in the game at the bus depot, so it's all good. And so begins the high-octane on-rail vehicle shooting section. Personally, I love a high-octane on-rail vehicle shooting section. I know they're not for everyone, but I do enjoy them. It is proper action movie fantasy stuff. Very cinematic, very cool, lots of explosions, lots of vehicle madness, I love them. And of course, there are plenty of deaths to be had in this part as well. Sometimes when trying to capture a death in 100 Ways to Die, it means playing the game like an absolute idiot. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm deliberately missing the enemy speedboats, to give them a chance to give me plenty of damage and kill me. But in this first section, even with me shooting all over the place, they still don't quite cause enough damage to kill me. So the elusive speedboat chase death is going to have to wait until later on in this level. The first death in this chase sequence comes in the form of the patrol boat lobbing Molotov cocktails at you. I decided this was a bit much. I'd rather keep it simple. Have death from the patrol boat or death from Molotov. Not death from Molotov that's been thrown from a patrol boat. It kind of felt like a bit much and maybe a bit repetitive. I kind of sit back a bit here, let the boat soak up some damage, and see what happens later. I was still aiming to get blown up by a speedboat at some point. I did think that getting shot up by a bunch of guys just on dry land whilst I was in a boat was interesting enough to make it into the final cut. But then this guy just decided to lob a grenade into the boat. Pretty lucky throw, and that's exactly what I call this clip, and it made it into the final video. Okay, after shooting all the landlubbers in a massive explosion, we then get treated to a car versus boat chase. There's so many of them, they're in a proper convoy. In the end, I went for the caption Redneck Convoy in this one. I'm not 100% happy with that caption really, but that seemed to be the best of a bad bunch. I thought it was a bit boring just putting like shot by pickup truck or something like that, so in the end I went for Redneck Convoy. And it took them a fair while to kill me too. At one point I didn't think they were actually going to kill me, but they managed it eventually. After taking down all the trucks, it's time for some more boat-on-boat action. This is the bit I've been waiting for. Speedboat chase to blow me up. I tried this out a couple of times, to see which would be the more action-packed, and in the end I went for this one. So there we have it, death by speedboat chase as promised. We then enter the climactic end of the speedboat chase. One of the patrol boats smashes you down this gap here, and you end up flying off a ramp and through a shack. Pretty cool way to end the level. During the slow motion section, I accidentally ended up doming Fabia right in the head. Sorry about that. But this clip ended up in a very special section of the video. One of the recent gags I've recently started doing in my videos is showing all these dramatic character deaths, with some really inappropriate comedy music playing over the background. I created this montage originally in The Last of Us Part 1, which is obviously a very serious game, with some very harrowing deaths. And adding this polka comedy music over the top of it is really inappropriate but very funny. I then used this again for when I remade my video 100 Ways to Die in The Last of Us Part 2, and I made it into this video as well, showing off all the main character deaths in this game. It also keeps things a bit interesting as it's not Max dying for once. So for the last death in this mission, all I did was sit there and do nothing and let the bad guys finish off the boat whilst it's flying through the air. It then crashes down and explodes, and that's where we get the speedboat crash death, right at the end. And I think that wraps it up for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit more about how I make these videos, and that you found it vaguely interesting. As you may have seen from a recent post, I went on a bit of a shopping spree. I bought multiple old games including Half-Life 2, Battlefield 1, Resident Evil Biohazard, and expect some 100 Ways to Die videos from those games in the very near future. I've been Foolish Pedro, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Fabiana had slipped through my fingers for a second time. Another habit I didn't want or need.
It's close. We almost had her. Damn.